Commander Zethrak pressed his six-fingered hand against the cold metal of the observation deck window. Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had, bright dots scattered across the endless dark of space. But something was very wrong. No ships moved between them. No signals came from the colonies. The galaxy had become quiet in a way that made his skin crawl. The plague had a name now: the silence. It moved faster than any disease should be able to move. It jumped from world to world, carried by trade ships and refugee vessels. Every species that came into contact with it died within hours. Not just some of them, all of them. Zethrak walked back to the command center of the research station. His people, the Kethmori, had been studying diseases for over 1,000 years. They thought they understood how plagues worked. They were wrong. "Commander," called Dr. Vestani from her station. Her voice shook. "I just lost contact with the last science outpost on Kepler 442b. That makes it all of them." The commander sat down heavily in his chair. The Kepler system had been home to the Velthari, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had survived ice ages and wars with other star systems. They had built cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants. Now they were gone. "How many species have we lost contact with?" Zethrak asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 47 confirmed extinct, sir. 23 more gone dark in the last day. And sir, Dr. Vestani paused, "we just picked up a distress signal from a Velthari science ship. It's heading toward an unknown star system. The crew is already dead, but the ship's computers are still working." Zethrak closed his eyes. The Velthari were known for their automated ships. Even after the crew died, the vessels would keep following their last orders. This ship was probably programmed to investigate new worlds. It would carry the silence to whatever unlucky species lived in that system. "Can we contact them? Warn them?" the commander asked. "We've been trying, sir, but we don't know their communication frequencies. We don't even know if they exist yet. The ship is heading toward a yellow star system with 9 planets. Third planet looks like it might have water." Dr. Vestani pulled up the data on the main screen. The system was far from the main trade routes. If there was intelligent life there, they might not even know other species existed. They would see the ship coming and think it was a gift from the stars. They had no idea it would kill them all. "Sir, I'm reading something strange," said Lieutenant Mordash from the communications station. "The Velthari ship is broadcasting on all frequencies. It's not just a distress signal. It's everything. Their entire database, history, science, art, everything their people ever learned or created." Zethrak felt a chill run down his spine. The Velthari knew they were the last of their kind. They were trying to make sure something of their civilization would survive, even if no one was left to remember them. More signals started coming in. Other automated ships from other dead worlds, all broadcasting their species' final messages. The Zorathi, who had mastered space travel before most worlds had multicellular life. The peaceful Indari, who had never fought a war in their entire history. The ancient Protheans, who had been exploring the galaxy since before the Kethmori learned to make fire. All of them dead. All of them trying to leave something behind. "Commander, we need to make a choice," Dr. Vesitani said quietly. "The plague has reached the outer colonies of our home system. We have maybe 6 hours before it gets here. We can try to run, or we can do what the others did," Zethrak finished. "Send out our own message." The truth was there was nowhere to run. The silence moved too fast. It seemed to be carried by space itself, jumping from ship to ship, world to world, faster than light. Every species that had tried to evacuate had only helped it spread. "Prepare a broadcast on all known frequencies," the commander ordered. "Include everything. Our history, our science, our art, our mistakes. Everything we've learned about the silence. Maybe someone out there will be smart enough to learn from our failures." Dr. Vesitani nodded and began preparing the transmission. It would take several hours to compile everything. They probably had that long. Maybe. Zethrak looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, that Velthari ship was getting closer to the yellow star system. In a few days or weeks, the people on that water-covered planet would see it coming. They would probably be excited. First contact with an alien species. They would have no idea they were looking at their own death sentence. "Add this to the transmission," the commander said. "A warning specifically for them. The species in the yellow star system. Tell them not to approach any ships from space. Tell them to run. Tell them to hide. Tell them that if they want to live, they need to stay away from us and everyone like us." "Sir, do you really think they'll understand?" asked Lieutenant Mordash. Sethrak thought about it. Every intelligent species they had ever met had been curious. It was what made them intelligent in the first place. Curiosity had driven them to explore, to learn, to build civilizations that reached for the stars. But now that same curiosity would kill them. "No," he said finally. "They won't understand. They'll think they can handle it. They'll think they're different. They'll think they can find a cure or build a defense or somehow be the ones to beat it. Every species thinks they're special. Every species thinks they're the exception." The commander paused, watching the stars. But maybe, just maybe, they'll be right. The hours passed quickly. Dr. Vestani and her team worked to compile their entire civilization into a single transmission. Art and science, philosophy and technology, love songs and war stories. Everything the Keth Mori had ever been or done or dreamed of doing. When the signal went out, it would join hundreds of others already traveling through space. The final words of the galaxy's greatest civilizations, all hoping that someone, somewhere, would be wise enough or lucky enough or different enough to survive. Zethrak made one last entry in his personal log. "To whoever finds this message, we failed. Every species in this galaxy had thousands of years to prepare for something like this. We had the best science, the greatest minds, the most advanced technology, and we all failed. Don't be like us. Don't think you can fight this. Don't think you can cure it. Don't think you can reason with it. The silence doesn't care how smart you are or how advanced your civilization is. It just wants to end everything. If you want to live, stay away from us. Stay away from our ships, our worlds, our signals. Let the galaxy die and build something new somewhere else." The first symptoms appeared an hour later. Dr. Vestani collapsed at her station. Then Lieutenant Mordash. One by one, the crew began to fall silent. Zethrak felt it starting in his own mind. A strange quietness, like his thoughts were being turned off one by one. He used his last moments of consciousness to activate the emergency beacon and set the station's database to broadcast continuously. The Keth Mori research station joined the growing chorus of dead worlds, sending their final message into the void. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, that message raced toward a small blue planet, carrying a warning that probably wouldn't be heeded and hope that probably wouldn't matter. The galaxy had become a graveyard, but graveyards sometimes had visitors, and sometimes those visitors were harder to kill than anyone expected. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the screen in the deep space monitoring station, her coffee growing cold in her hands. For the past 3 weeks, signals had been pouring in from across the galaxy. Not the kind of signals they had been hoping to receive when humanity first started listening to the stars. These were death songs. "Another one just came in," said Dr. Marcus Webb from the next station over. "This one's from something called the Hegemony of Zor. Looks like they had colonies on about 40 different worlds." "Had" being the key word, Sarah muttered. She had been cataloging the transmissions since they started arriving. Each one told the same story: a plague, a disease that killed everything it touched, and now it was spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. The signals came in many different languages and from many different species, but humanity's computers were getting better at translating them. The message was always the same: "We are dying. We failed to stop it. Run, hide, don't let it find you." Sarah's supervisor, Dr. James Harrison, walked over to her station. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. None of them had been sleeping much since the signals started coming in. "Chen, I need you to look at this," he said, handing her a tablet. "We just picked up something different. It's not a distress signal. It's an actual ship." Sarah looked at the data on the tablet. A vessel was approaching the solar system. It was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. The design was completely alien, with smooth curves and materials that didn't show up properly on their sensors. "Where did it come from?" she asked. "Best guess?" "The Kepler 442 system. That matches one of the distress signals we received yesterday, a species called the Velthari." Dr. Harrison sat down heavily. "Sarah, the ship is broadcasting the plague signature. Whatever killed the Velthari is on that vessel." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "How long until it reaches Earth?" "At current speed, 6 days. But it's slowing down. The computer system seemed to be following some kind of first contact protocol. It's trying to communicate with us." Sarah looked at the translation software running on her computer. The alien ship was indeed trying to talk to them. It was broadcasting mathematical sequences, basic physics, and what looked like star charts, the same kind of peaceful first contact messages that Earth had been preparing to send for decades. "It doesn't know," she said quietly. "The crew is dead, but the ship's computers are still following their last orders. It thinks it's making peaceful contact with a new species." Dr. Harrison nodded grimly. "The question is, what do we do about it? Do we tell it to go away? Do we try to destroy it? Do we ignore it and hope it leaves? Has anyone considered that this might be our only chance?" Sarah asked. "I mean, think about it. Every other species in the galaxy is dead. This ship contains the only samples of this plague that we're going to get. If we want to understand it, if we want to develop any kind of defense, we need to study it. Sarah, this thing has killed billions of intelligent beings across dozens of star systems. Every species that came into contact with it died within hours. What makes you think humans would be any different?" Sarah turned to look at him. "Because maybe we are different. Every one of these transmissions talks about how the plague affects neural activity. It shuts down the brain somehow. But human brains aren't like other animal brains on Earth. We're weird. We've got this strange immune system that's adapted to fight off diseases that most animals can't handle. Maybe that weirdness extends to alien diseases too." Dr. Harrison looked skeptical. "That's a hell of a gamble, Chen." "Everything's a gamble at this point," Sarah replied. "We can run and hide, but where? The plague is spreading through the galaxy. Sooner or later it's going to find us no matter what we do, or we can try to understand it now while we still have a chance." The debate raged for hours. Some scientists wanted to try to destroy the ship before it got close to Earth. Others wanted to evacuate the planet. A few, like Sarah, wanted to make contact and try to learn about the plague. In the end, the decision came from an unexpected source. The president of Earth's United Nations received a call from the International Space Station. Commander Elena Vasquez, the station's leader, had been monitoring the alien ship's approach. "With respect, Mr. President," Commander Vasquez said over the communication link, "we're already in space. We're already at risk, and we're the closest thing humanity has to experts on hostile environments. If someone's going to make contact with this ship, it should be us." Sarah found herself volunteering to join the contact team before she fully realized what she was doing. Maybe it was scientific curiosity. Maybe it was the knowledge that hiding wouldn't work forever. Maybe it was just the human refusal to go down without a fight. 3 days later, she was on a shuttle heading for the International Space Station. With her were Dr. James Park, a specialist in infectious diseases, and Dr. Nina Okafor, whose expertise in alien biology was entirely theoretical until now. The alien ship had stopped just outside Earth's orbital zone. It was even more impressive up close. The hull seemed to shift colors in the sunlight, and strange symbols covered its surface. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. "Are we really going to board that thing?" Dr. Park asked as they docked with the space station. "Unless you've got a better idea," Sarah replied. "We've been monitoring it for 3 days. No life signs. No movement. The plague is definitely present, but it's contained within the ship's systems. If we're careful, if we use proper containment protocols, we might be able to learn something useful." Commander Vasquez met them at the airlock. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. "I've got a team of 6 ready to go with you. Full environmental suits, portable lab equipment, and enough firepower to level a city block if things go wrong. I don't think weapons are going to help us against a plague," Dr. Okafor pointed out. "Maybe not, but they make me feel better," the commander replied. "Dr. Chen, are you sure about this? Once we go over there, we might not be coming back." Sarah looked out the window at the alien ship. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, full of secrets that might save humanity or destroy it. Every rational part of her mind was screaming that this was a terrible idea. But the irrational part, the part that had driven humans to explore every dangerous corner of their own planet, was stronger. "I'm sure," she said. "Besides, if this thing kills us, at least we'll know what we're dealing with. And maybe that knowledge will help the people back on Earth." The boarding party suited up in the most advanced environmental protection gear that humanity had ever built. Each suit had its own air supply, radiation shielding, and biological containment systems. They looked like walking tanks. The alien ship's airlock opened easily when they approached. The Velthari had designed their ships to welcome visitors. Even in death, their hospitality protocols were still running. Inside, the ship was a marvel of engineering. The corridors were wide and graceful. with soft lighting that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Art covered every surface. Images of alien landscapes, portraits of creatures with large eyes and delicate features, star charts showing the locations of worlds that were now silent. They found the crew in what appeared to be the bridge. 12 Velthari slumped over their stations as if they had simply fallen asleep. Their bodies were perfectly preserved. Whatever the plague did, it killed quickly and cleanly. Scanning for the pathogen, Dr. Park announced, running his equipment over the nearest body. It's definitely here, concentrated in the nervous system. But the strange thing is, it's not behaving like any biological agent I've ever seen. Sarah collected samples from the air, the surfaces, and carefully, from one of the alien bodies. Every reading should have been telling her that she was surrounded by death, that she was breathing in the same plague that had killed entire civilizations, but she felt fine. They all felt fine. How long were the other species exposed before symptoms started? Dr. Okafor asked. Sarah checked her tablet. According to the transmissions, most species started showing symptoms within an hour of exposure. Some lasted up to 6 hours, but none of them made it past that. They had been on the ship for 4 hours now. They had taken off their helmets to get better samples. They had breathed the same air that had killed the Velthari, and nothing was happening. Dr. Chen, Commander Vasquez's voice came through their communication system from the space station. How are you feeling over there? Sarah looked around at her team. Dr. Park was carefully examining alien computer systems. Dr. Okafor was taking detailed scans of the Velthari bodies. Everyone was working normally, thinking clearly, showing no signs of the neural shutdown that had killed every other species. We're fine, Commander, Sarah said, almost not believing it herself. We've been exposed for hours and we're fine. The implications hit her like a physical blow. Either the plague wasn't as dangerous as they thought, or humans were immune to it. And if they were immune, that changed everything. Commander, we need to stay here longer, Sarah said. We need to understand why we're not dead. We need to figure out what makes humans different. Negative, Dr. Chen, you've been exposed long enough. Come back to the station and we'll run every test we can think of. Sarah took one last look around the alien bridge. The Velthari had been an advanced species with technology far beyond anything Humidoctor. Sarah Chen sat in the medical bay of the International Space Station, watching Dr. Park draw her blood for the 15th time in 3 days. The test kept coming back the same. The plague was in her system. It was active, alive, and trying to do whatever it had done to every other species in the galaxy. But for some reason, it just couldn't get a grip on human biology. This doesn't make sense, Dr. Park muttered, studying the latest results on his tablet. The pathogen is definitely there. I can see it trying to interact with your nervous system. But it's like it can't find the right connection points. Sarah rolled up her sleeve as he finished with the blood draw. They had been back from the Velthari ship for 72 hours now. According to every piece of data they had collected from alien transmissions, she should have been dead 3 days ago. Maybe human nervous systems are just too different, she suggested. The plague might be designed to work with standard galactic biology, and we're not standard. Dr. Okafor looked up from her computer station. She had been analyzing the genetic structure of the plague since they returned. Sarah's probably right. Look at this. She put the data up on the main screen. Every alien species we've found records of has similar neural pathways. They all evolved in basically the same way. But humans are weird. Weird how? Sarah asked. Everything about us is wrong from a galactic perspective. Our immune system is insane. Most species evolve immunity to specific diseases. But humans evolved a general immune response that can adapt to almost anything. We're walking biological warfare labs because we had to be. Earth is a nightmare planet. Sarah had heard this theory before, but it was starting to make more sense now. Earth was a world where everything tried to kill everything else. Diseases jumped between species constantly. Parasites evolved new ways to infect hosts every generation. Humans had survived by developing the most aggressive, adaptable immune system possible. The plague works by shutting down neural activity, Dr. Park continued. But human brains don't work like other brains. We've got all these redundant systems, backup pathways, ways to reroute information when parts of the brain get damaged. The plague can't shut us down because it can't find all the switches. Commander Vasquez walked into the medical bay carrying a communication tablet. She looked tired but excited. I just got off a call with Mission Control. They want to bring you back to Earth for more extensive testing. But before that happens, they want us to try something. She handed the tablet to Sarah. On the screen was a message from the President of the United Nations and the heads of every major space agency on Earth. They want us to board more alien ships? Sarah read aloud. How many more? All of them, Commander Vasquez said. We've identified 17 more vessels heading toward Earth. Ships from different species, different parts of the galaxy. If humans really are immune to this plague, we need to know for sure. And we need to understand what killed all these civilizations. Dr. Park shook his head. That's incredibly dangerous. Just because we survived exposure to one version of the plague doesn't mean we can survive all of them. Different species might have been infected with different strains. But think about what we could learn, Dr. Okafor said, getting excited. Each ship is like a time capsule, a complete record of an entire civilization, their science, their culture, their history. If we can safely explore these ships, we could learn more about galactic civilization in a few weeks than we might discover in centuries of normal exploration. Sarah looked at the list of incoming ships. The names were all alien, translated by computer programs that were getting better at understanding galactic languages. The Harmony of Mist, the Eternal Sunset, the Dream of Deep Waters. Each name represented a species that had reached for the stars and failed to survive their first contact with the plague. How long do we have before the first ship arrives? She asked. 6 hours, Commander Vasquez replied. It's a small vessel from a species called the Indari. Their transmission suggests they were a peaceful people who never developed military technology. They were explorers and artists. Sarah made her decision. I want to be on the boarding team. Sarah, you don't have to do this, Dr. Park said. We could send robots or wait for more volunteers from Earth. No, Sarah said firmly. If humans are immune to this plague, then we have a responsibility. These ships aren't just death traps, they're memorials. The last remnants of entire civilizations. Someone needs to witness what they accomplished. Someone needs to remember them. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and her team boarded ship after ship. Each vessel told a different story. The Indari ship was filled with beautiful art and music that brought tears to their eyes. The Zarathi vessel contained scientific instruments more advanced than anything humans had dreamed of building. The Prothean ship was ancient beyond imagination, with technology that seemed to work by pure thought. And in every ship, they found the same thing. Perfectly preserved bodies of intelligent beings who had died from a plague that couldn't even give a human a headache. The pattern became clear as they explored more vessels. The plague wasn't just a disease. It was intelligent. It adapted to each species it encountered, learning their biology and finding the most efficient way to shut down their nervous systems. But human biology was so chaotic, so full of redundancies and evolutionary dead ends, that the plague couldn't figure out how to kill them. We're like a puzzle that can't be solved, Dr. Okafor explained during one of their daily briefings with Earth. Every other species evolved in a logical way. Their biology follows patterns, but humans evolved on a world where the rules kept changing. We're biological chaos, and chaos is hard to predict or control. The news of humanity's immunity spread quickly. Within a month, Earth was no longer hiding from the plague. Instead, ships from Earth were heading out to explore the silent galaxy. Every abandoned world, every drifting vessel, every space station that had gone dark was now a potential source of knowledge. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself leading the first expedition to an alien homeworld. The planet had been called Velthar Prime by its inhabitants. Now it was just another dead world orbiting a distant star. The cities were intact. Whatever the plague did, it didn't cause panic or destruction. The Velthari had simply stopped what they were doing and died where they stood. Sarah walked through libraries filled with books written in flowing alien script. She explored museums containing artifacts from a civilization that had lasted thousands of years. She stood in parks where alien children had played games that no one would ever play again. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Sarah, you need to see this, Dr. Park called from across the plaza. He was standing in front of what looked like a memorial wall. Thousands of names were carved into dark stone, with symbols that their translation software couldn't interpret. What is it? Sarah asked as she joined him. I think it's a list of extinct species, he said quietly. Look at these dates. Some of these names are thousands of years old. The Velthari weren't just victims of the plague. They were keeping track of it. Sarah ran her hand over the carved names. There were so many of them. Species that had lived and died before humans had even learned to make fire. The plague had been moving through the galaxy for a very long time, and the Velthari had been watching it happen. They knew, she said. They knew the plague was coming for them and they couldn't stop it. At the bottom of the memorial wall, they found something even more disturbing. Recent additions to the list. Names of species that had died in the last few months. And at the very bottom, carved in fresh stone, were the words Velthari, final entry. The Velthari had carved their own name on the memorial before they died. That night, as Sarah sat in her temporary shelter on the dead world, she tried to process what they had learned. Humanity wasn't just immune to the plague. They were the first species to be immune to it. In thousands of years of galactic history, every intelligent species that encountered the plague had died. Every single one until now. The responsibility of that knowledge was overwhelming. Humanity had inherited a galaxy full of empty worlds and silent cities. They were the only witnesses left to remember the civilizations that had come before. But they were also something else. They were proof that the plague could be beaten, that intelligence and curiosity and the stubborn refusal to give up could survive even the most perfect killer. Sarah looked up at the alien stars and made a promise. Humanity would remember. They would preserve what they found. They would make sure that the Velthari and the Indari and the Zorathi and all the others were not forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to make sure that nothing like this ever happened again. The galaxy was quiet now, but it wouldn't stay that way forever. Humans were noisy by nature, and they were about to make the universe a much more interesting place. Ennis headache. 5 years had passed since humanity first set foot on an alien world. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Grand Archive on Europa, watching teams of researchers catalog artifacts from the 43rd extinct civilization they had discovered. The warehouse stretched for kilometers underground, filled with art, technology, and cultural treasures from across the galaxy. It should have been the greatest moment in human history. Instead, it felt like the saddest job in the universe. Dr. Chen called Dr. Yuki Tanaka from across the archive floor. We just finished processing the ethereal music collection. 5,000 years of compositions, and some of them they're beautiful beyond words. Sarah walked over to where Dr. Tanaka stood next to a display of crystalline storage devices. Each crystal contained entire symphonies composed by beings who had experienced sound differently than humans. The translation computers could convert the alien music into frequencies that human ears could understand, but something was always lost in the process. "Have you listened to any of it?" Sarah asked. Dr. Tanaka nodded, but her eyes looked distant. The last piece they composed. It's called Song for the Silent Stars. They wrote it after they received the warning transmissions from other dying species. They knew they were going to die, and they spent their final days creating this beautiful, sad song about how the universe was becoming quiet. Sarah had heard too many stories like this. Every species they studied had faced the plague in their own way. Some had tried to fight it. Others had tried to run. A few had simply accepted their fate and spent their final days creating monuments to their own existence. All of them had failed. All except humanity. "Dr. Chen," came a voice from her communication device. "Please report to Conference Room Alpha. Priority 1. Sarah sighed and made her way through the archive to the administrative section. Conference Room Alpha was where the difficult decisions got made. The room where human leaders tried to figure out what to do with an entire galaxy's worth of inheritance. Inside, she found Admiral Morrison, the head of the Human Galactic Exploration Initiative, along with Dr. Elizabeth Harper from the Xenocultural Preservation Society and Professor David Kim from the Ethics Council. "Sarah, we need to talk," Admiral Morrison said without preamble. "We've got a problem. 3 problems, actually." He activated the holographic display in the center of the room. A star map appeared, showing human settlements and exploration routes across dozens of star systems. "Problem 1, the Admiral continued. "We're running out of storage space. Every world we explore gives us terabytes of cultural data, millions of artifacts, and enough scientific information to keep our researchers busy for centuries. We can't preserve everything, but we can't bear to throw anything away either." Sarah nodded. She had seen the storage facilities filling up. Every day, ships returned from dead worlds carrying the treasures of extinct civilizations. Museums, libraries, art galleries, scientific laboratories, all of it abandoned, all of it irreplaceable. "Problem 2, Dr. Harper took over. Survivor syndrome is spreading through our exploration teams. Last month, we had to bring back 3 entire crews for psychological treatment. They can't handle the scale of what we're seeing. Entire civilizations, billions of years of evolution, magnificent cultures that took thousands of years to develop, all reduced to empty buildings and silent machines. Sarah had seen it herself. Strong, capable people who broke down crying in the middle of alien museums. Scientists who couldn't sleep because they kept thinking about all the knowledge that had been lost. Explorers who became obsessed with preserving every single artifact, no matter how small or insignificant. And problem 3, Professor Kim said grimly, is the worst one. We're starting to see fractures in human unity. Some groups think we should just take what's useful and ignore the rest. Others want to turn every dead world into a shrine. And a growing number are suggesting that maybe we should focus less on preserving the past and more on preventing this from happening again, Admiral. Morrison brought up a new display, showing human settlements across the galaxy. We've got colonies on 47 worlds now. Most of them are just research stations and preservation sites. But some groups are starting to talk about permanent settlement, taking over alien cities using alien technology, treating dead worlds like real estate. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Please tell me we're not actually considering that. We're not, Dr. Harper said quickly. But we can't stop independent groups from making their own decisions. The Harrison colony on Proxima 7 has already moved into a Zarathi city. They say it's more efficient than building their own structures. The Velthari research station is using alien manufacturing technology to build human equipment. And yesterday, Professor Kim added, I received a proposal from a group calling themselves the Galactic Reclamation Society. They want to terraform dead worlds and establish permanent human settlements. They're calling it giving new life to dead places. Sarah sat down heavily. This was exactly what she had been afraid of. When humans first discovered their immunity to the plague, everyone had focused on the scientific opportunities, the chance to study alien technology, to learn from advanced civilizations to understand how the universe really worked. But over time, the reality had set in. They weren't just researchers studying dead cultures. They were the inheritors of an entire galaxy's worth of empty real estate. What do the alien historical records say about this kind of situation? Admiral Morrison asked. Have we found any examples of species dealing with mass extinction events? Sarah pulled up her tablet and accessed the Xenohistorical database. Actually, yes. The Protheans left extensive records about a plague outbreak that hit their sector about 50,000 years ago. A disease called the Grey Death wiped out 17 species in their local cluster. What did they do about it? They preserved what they could and moved on, Sarah said. But the scale was much smaller. 17 species, not the entire galaxy. And the Protheans themselves survived to do the preserving. Dr. Harper leaned forward. What about genetic records? Have we found any evidence that extinct species tried to preserve their genetic heritage? Sarah nodded. Several species created genetic banks before they died. The Indari, the hegemony of Zor, and at least a dozen others. Complete genetic records stored in crystal matrices designed to last millions of years. Could we bring them back? Professor Kim asked quietly. The room fell silent. It was the question that everyone had been thinking, but no one had wanted to ask out loud. Theoretically, Sarah said carefully. Maybe. Some of the genetic records are complete enough that we might be able to clone extinct species. But that raises a whole host of ethical questions. Do we have the right to resurrect extinct civilizations? What kind of life would we be giving them? And most importantly, would they still be vulnerable to the plague? Admiral Morrison stood up and began pacing. Let's table the resurrection question for now. We need to deal with the immediate problems first. Sarah, I'm putting you in charge of a new project. We need to establish protocols for galactic preservation and settlement. Rules about what we preserve, what we use, and what we leave alone. Sir, I'm not sure I'm qualified to make those kinds of decisions. Nobody is, the Admiral replied. But you've spent more time on alien worlds than anyone else. You've seen what these civilizations accomplished. If anyone can figure out how to honor their memory while still allowing humanity to move forward, it's you. Sarah accepted the assignment, but her heart was heavy. How do you balance respect for the dead with the needs of the living? How do you preserve the memory of extinct civilizations without turning their worlds into museums? How do you prevent humanity from becoming just another conquering species spreading across the galaxy? Over the next few months, Sarah traveled to dozens of human settlements across dead worlds. She saw the Harrison colony, where humans lived in Zarathi buildings and used Zarathi technology, but had removed all traces of the original inhabitants. She visited the memorial gardens on Indari Prime, where human colonists had turned an entire continent into a shrine to the extinct species, and she saw the Velthari research station, where Dr. Nina Okafor was working on something that might change everything. "Sarah, you have to see this," Dr. Okafor said, leading her into a restricted laboratory. "We've been working with the Velthari genetic records, and we've made a breakthrough." On the laboratory table was a small container filled with what looked like glowing liquid. "This is a Velthari neural pattern, stored in their equivalent of DNA. Not just genetic information, but actual memories, personality, knowledge. Everything that made an individual Velthari who they were." Sarah stared at the container. "You're saying we could bring back not just the species, but actual individuals?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. The Velthari weren't just preserving their genetic heritage. They were preserving themselves. And if we can figure out how to safely implement these patterns..." Dr. Okafor paused. "Sarah, we could resurrect entire civilizations. Not just their bodies, but their minds, their cultures, their knowledge. It was the kind of discovery that could change everything." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that it would also create problems they weren't prepared to handle. "Nina," she said quietly, "what if they don't want to be brought back? What if they prefer to stay extinct rather? 20 years had passed since the first human set foot on an alien world." Dr. Sarah Chen, now in her 60s with gray streaking through her hair, stood before the massive gates of the Great Archive on Luna. The underground facility had grown beyond anyone's imagination, stretching deep into the moon's core and extending across entire continents. But today wasn't about preservation. Today was about resurrection. Dr. Chen, called Dr. James Harrison III, son of her old supervisor and now the lead researcher on the restoration project. "We're ready for the final sequence." Sarah walked through corridors lined with the treasures of 100 extinct civilizations, Zarathi sculptures that sang when touched by moonlight, Indari paintings that seemed to move when viewed from different angles, Prothean technologies that humanity still didn't fully understand, all of it preserved, cataloged, and protected. The restoration laboratory was located in the deepest part of the archive, surrounded by multiple layers of containment and security. Inside, a team of humanity's best scientists worked alongside artificial intelligences trained on the knowledge of extinct species. In the center of the room stood a device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a crystal garden, Velthari technology, adapted and improved by human engineering. "The Neural Pattern Resurrection Chamber, status report," Sarah said as she approached the control station. Dr. Elena Vasquez, daughter of the former space station commander, looked up from her instruments. "All systems are green. The pattern integration is complete. Neural pathways are stable. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Sarah looked at the readouts on the main screen. After 20 years of research, they had finally figured out how to safely resurrect extinct species. The process was complex and required the combined knowledge of dozens of alien civilizations, but it worked. They had started small. Simple organisms first, then more complex life forms, fish-like creatures from the oceans of Kepler 442b. Flying, animals that had once soared through the skies of Indari Prime. Each success had taught them more about the delicate balance between genetic information and neural patterns, but this was different. This was a person. "Who did we choose for the first attempt?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Zethrak of the Keth Mori," Dr. Harrison replied. "The commander who sent out the final warning. His neural pattern was the most complete in our archives, and his historical records suggest he was a thoughtful, careful individual. If we're going to bring someone back from extinction, he seemed like the best choice." Sarah nodded. Commander Zethrak had haunted her dreams for 20 years. His final transmission had been the first alien communication that humanity had received. In many ways, he was the reason they had survived. His warning had prepared them for what was coming. "Begin the resurrection sequence," she ordered. The chamber filled with soft light as alien technologies worked in harmony with human engineering. DNA patterns that had been extinct for decades began to reassemble. Neural pathways that had been silenced by the plague started to form new connections. Memories that had been stored in crystal matrices for 20 years began to flow into a reconstructed brain. It took 6 hours. 6 hours for an entire person to come back from extinction. When the light faded, a figure lay in the center of the chamber. Tall and thin, with the characteristic six-fingered hands of the Kethmori, alien, but somehow familiar after all the years of studying his species. Commander Zethrak opened his eyes. The first few minutes were critical. Disorientation was common in resurrection cases. Some subjects experienced memory fragmentation or identity confusion, but Zethrak seemed calm as he slowly sat up and looked around the laboratory. His eyes focused on Sarah, and she could see the moment when recognition set in. He was looking at a human, the species that his final warning had been meant to save. "You survived," he said in accented but clear English. The translation implants had done their job perfectly. Sarah stepped forward slowly. "We did. Thanks to your warning, we were prepared when the plague reached Earth." Zethrak looked around the laboratory, taking in the mix of human and alien technologies. "How long have I been gone?" 20 years, Sarah said gently. "The plague reached your research station in 2157. It's now 2177. The weight of that information seemed to hit him all at once. "My crew, my people, my civilization. Gone," Sarah said simply. "All of them. We're sorry." Zethrak was quiet for a long time, processing the reality of his situation. When he spoke again, his voice was steady but sad. "And you brought me back. Why?" It was the question Sarah had been preparing to answer for months. "Because we thought you deserved a chance to see that your sacrifice wasn't meaningless. Because we wanted to ask your permission before we resurrected more of your people. And because," she paused, "because we needed to know if we were doing the right thing." Over the following weeks, Zethrak learned about everything that had happened since his death. How humans had explored the galaxy and catalogued extinct civilizations. How they had established colonies on dead worlds and preserved alien cultures. How they had struggled with the ethical implications of inheriting an entire galaxy. He also learned about the plague itself. Human scientists had finally understood what it was and how it worked. Not a natural disease, but an artificial one. A weapon created by an ancient civilization that had gone extinct long before any of the recent victims had evolved. A doomsday device, Zethrak said during one of his briefings. Designed to wipe out all intelligent life in the galaxy. But why? Dr. Okafor, now the head of xenoarchaeology, pulled up the relevant data. "We think they were facing their own extinction. Maybe from a natural disaster, maybe from another plague. Rather than let the galaxy continue without them, they decided to take everyone else with them." "But it didn't work completely," Sarah added. "It killed every species it encountered, but it couldn't adapt to human biology. We were too chaotic, too random. The plague couldn't figure out how to kill us." Zethrak absorbed this information with the calm professionalism that had made him a good commander. "So humanity became the galaxy's immune system?" "In a way, yes," Sarah agreed. "But we've tried to be more than that. We've tried to be caretakers." She showed him the great archive with its vast collections of alien art and knowledge. She took him to the memorial gardens, where humans had created beautiful spaces to honor extinct species. She introduced him to human children who were learning alien languages and studying extinct cultures. "You've done well," Zethrak said after touring the memorial to his own people. "But this is only the beginning, isn't it?" "You didn't resurrect me just to give me a tour," Sarah smiled. He was as perceptive as his historical records had suggested. "We want to bring back your people. All of them. The Velthari, the Indari, the Zarathi, everyone we can. But we wanted to ask permission first. We wanted to make sure we weren't just playing God with extinct civilizations." Zethrak considered this for a long time. What would we do? Where would we live? How would we rebuild our societies? "Together," Sarah said. "Humans and resurrected aliens working together to make sure this never happens again. We've learned that diversity is strength. The plague succeeded because every species was similar enough for it to adapt to. But if we can create a truly diverse galactic civilization, with different biologies and different ways of thinking, we might be able to defend against the next threat." The first major resurrection project began 6 months later. An entire Velthari colony, brought back to life on their original homeworld. The process wasn't perfect. Some individuals suffered from memory gaps or identity confusion. Others had trouble adapting to the reality that their entire species had been extinct for decades. But most of them adapted remarkably well. They were grateful to be alive, grateful to have a second chance, and eager to contribute to the new galactic civilization that humans were building. Sarah stood in the plaza of New Velthar City, watching human children play alongside young Velthari, who had never experienced their species' original extinction. The integration hadn't been easy, but it was working. Commander Zethrak approached, carrying a tablet with the latest reports from other resurrection projects. The Indari colony is stabilizing nicely. The artists are already creating new works that blend their traditional styles with human influences. And the Zorathi scientists are making breakthrough discoveries by combining their knowledge with human research. Sarah smiled. Any problems we should know about? The usual adjustment issues. Some integration difficulties, but nothing we can't handle. Zethrak paused. Sarah, I wanted to thank you, not just for bringing me back, but for everything humanity has done. You could have just taken over our worlds and forgotten about us. Instead, you remembered us. You honored us. And you gave us a second chance. We learned from the best teachers, Sarah replied. Extinct civilizations have a way of putting things in perspective. The galaxy was no longer silent. Human settlements bustled with activity alongside colonies of resurrected aliens. Trade routes that had been empty for decades now carried ships full of goods and ideas. The great universities of humanity taught alien history and science, while resurrected species shared their knowledge.